Alrighty, hello everybody. So in this video, what I'm going to be showing you is just basic navigation around your OnShape document, as well as how to create a cube. Okay, so to create the cube, we're going to be using the sketch tool as well as the extrude tool. Okay, so before we get started on creating our cube here in this area, what I do want to show you is this cube right over here. Okay, so we've been talking about, isometric views, the different faces of, a cube or objects. And so as you can see, we've got the top, front, and right face here. All right, so now this almost appears to be an isometric view, but it actually is not. So this is actually a trimetric view. And so if you want to get an isometric view, what you can always do is click on this little cube right here and then click isometric. So if I do this, you'll see how that shifts, and then we have our isometric view now. Okay, so let's say that you create an object and you want to just be able to view the front face of your object. Well, what you can do is with this cube, as you'll see, whenever I go over and hover over the front face, it is highlighted blue, right? And so if I actually click on that, then what happens is it brings me to the front view. Okay, so now what you might be wondering is, Mr. Rainbolt, how do we get out of the front view? So what you can do is if you go back up to your cube and then go to this corner right here that gets shaded blue, and you click on that, it'll actually bring you back up to this view right here, which is not entirely an isometric view. So let's say we go back into this front view, and then I want to return to the isometric view. Another option is we just go right here and then click isometric. Okay, and then that brings you to the isometric view. Remember, this is a trimetric view, is what that's referred to as. So if you click right here, isometric, it'll bring you back. Okay, so now that we've got that settled, I do want to go ahead and show you all how to create your first object. So this is going to be a cube, right? And so super important thing to know is that in order to create a 3D object, we must first create a 2D shape using the sketch tool. Okay, so let me repeat that. In order to create a 3D object, we must first create a 2D shape using the sketch tool. Go ahead and write that down if you need to, because that'll be super important, and that's definitely a quiz-worthy question. Okay, so so the first step in creating our 3D object then is we need to create a 2D shape. And so if I am creating a cube, what we're going to need to do is create a two-dimensional shape, which should just be a square, right? And so what we can do is if we go up here, these are all the different tools that you can end up using for creating objects or manipulating objects and modifying them. But right here, this is one of the most important tools, and it is the sketch tool. So if we click on this sketch tool, you can also press Shift S as well. But if you click on this sketch tool, it'll allow us to create a two-dimensional shape. Okay, so as you can see, we have right here this blue little window. It's telling me select a sketch plane. And then as well over here, we have this window that showed up. And then it's saying sketch plane, and it's just showing up as blue. So it's asking us to create a sketch plane. Okay, so also you will notice that this is red up here. Sketch number 1 is red. Anytime that this window shows up and this is red, that means that there's a problem. And so if you hover over it, it actually tells you sketch 1 did not regenerate properly. Select a sketch plane. Okay, so if you're ever having any issues, hover over that. That more than likely will tell you what the problem is. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to create a sketch plane. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select the top face or the top plane. So basically we have 3 different planes that you can select at any time. So it's the top plane right here, which is highlighted in orange. There's also the right plane, which is basically the right face. And then we've got the front plane, which is basically the front face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the top plane though. And so now, as you can see, this red error went away. Okay. So what we want to do is actually create a square, okay? Because we're going to create the square, and then we're going to use a tool called the Extrude tool to actually extrude that. So let's go ahead and let's click on this top face because I selected the top plane to be basically the plane that I can create this shape on. I need to actually see the top plane, okay? So in this case, I'll be able to add a shape on here. Let's say if I would end up doing the front face here and I would try to create an object on the front face, that will not work, okay? Because we're trying to create an object right here, but this is the front plane and not the top plane. Okay, so always make sure that your sketch plane lines up with the plane that you're viewing. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's go back to the top view. And so now what I'm going to be able to do is create this square, right? And so if I go up here, you'll notice that there are different tools, different sketch tools. So this allows me to create a line. So if you would want, you could create, 4 lines to create that square. You would have to be pretty careful so that you end up having the same dimensions for those lines, though. So what you can also do is right here, they've got a rectangle tool. Okay, if you click down this drop down though, it'll actually give you the option to create a center point rectangle. Okay, so you can do either or of these. What I'm going to do is a center point rectangle because if we hover over that, that tells me that it allows me to create a rectangle using a center point, and a corner. So first we need to click to indicate the starting center point. And then second, we need to click to indicate the end corner point. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to click on this. And then so now it's always super helpful to always start your sketches centered on the origin. And so since we use the center rectangle tool, the first point is the actual center of this rectangle, right? Which is gonna be a square. And so what I can do is I can click on this origin point, and then that will create my rectangle so that it's actually centered on that origin point. Okay. So then now what you will notice is as I'm moving this around, you will see that there are numbers on the bottom line and then the left line of this rectangle. You'll see that they are changing. So those are actually the dimensions of the rectangle. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to create a square, right? So what I'm going to go ahead and do is, you could try to actually line this up so it's exactly 1.125 on both of those, but I will tell you that's going to be super hard and kind of a pain. So what we're going to do is we can actually specify the dimensions that we want this rectangle to be after we've created it. So if I go ahead and click on my mouse, and I just clicked one time, do not click more than once, what you're going to notice is that this number right here becomes a box, and then the box is white on the inside. And so what that allows you to do is to type in dimensions for this. Okay, so I will tell you, you do not click for this part again. If you click again, then what's going to happen is it's just going to go to create a new center rectangle. Okay, so all you do is just hover over it, do not click, and then you can type in your dimensions. So for instance, for us, we need to do 1.125. Okay, then what we do is press enter. What you will see then is it goes to the next side of your rectangle, which will soon be a square. So then now, since that's emboldened or we got that a box around that, we're going to go ahead and type in this dimension. So I want this to be 1.125 as well because we need the same dimensions. 1.125. So now those dimensions have been created. Okay. So let's say that I messed up and let me do the undo. Or here, let me just undo this whole thing. So let's say that I messed up. And let's say instead I ended up on accident. I made this one 1.125, but then let's say this one I kept the same. So I'll press enter again. Okay, so I don't know if that's gonna, I'll just go ahead and do Well, yeah, 1.415. Let's say that one stayed the same, or it became something super crazy. It became 1,415. So if I go in here and I try to click on this again, what's going to happen is it's just going to go to create another rectangle. Okay, so to get out of this tool, the rectangle tool, you can either click on this button up here, the center point rectangle tool again, or you can press escape and that will get you out of it. Okay, so now you can see that I'm back to my regular mouse. And so if I hover over this dimension now, then what happens is it allows me to edit it. So then now, I can put in the 1.125. It becomes my square, becomes the same thing. But what I want to do is, let's imagine that somehow I deleted that dimension on there. So I don't really know what dimension that is. So what we can do, we can actually use the dimension tool. So we've got the dimension tool right here. And what this allows you to do is actually set the dimension for a line. So as you can see, I clicked on this line right here. It is highlighted in orange, or I'm hovering over it. So if I click on that line, it's going to actually give me the option to see the dimension and then also to set up the dimension. And so I just clicked on that other line on accident. So now it's trying to set up an angle between those. But if I go right here, so now it's asking me, well, what dimensions do you want to put this at? So let's say if I did want to create a rectangle, then I could do 1.5. Okay, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to switch it to 1.125. Okay, so let's go ahead and click the green button here. And so now what we can see is if I go back to, let's go back to the isometric view, is that we've created this two-dimensional shape, right? And so what we need to do is we need to actually do what is called extruding. So we need to extrude this shape to give it a third dimension. So basically, we're going to be pushing this object. Is what you can kind of think, or you're going to be stretching out this shape almost for a certain distance to create that third dimension. Okay, we're going to give it height. So what we need to do is we got to bring up the extrude tool. So if you go right here, you can either click on this or you can press Shift E. That will bring up the extrude tool. So if we click extrude, then what it's going to ask me, so once again, you can see that this shows up red. And so if I hover over this, it's going to tell me what we need to do. So it says, extrude 1 did not regenerate properly. Select face or sketch region to extrude. Okay, so the faces are the sketch regions. So this right here, this was a sketch region, or a sketch entity, right? We're also creating the face. We're creating a face of our cube. So this is definitely what we want to click on and select. Okay, so now, as you can see, after I've clicked on that, it actually already created that third dimension for me. Okay, and so we don't know, just by looking at this, we don't know how far that actually extruded up or what the height of this object is. So what you've got to do is come over here to the depth. So they refer to, the depth just being whatever direction you're extruding an object. So this really could be the height of the object, say, but they just always refer to it as being the depth. Okay. So what we want is, because this is going to be a cube, we want it to have the same dimension, right, that we had our square be. So our square was 1.125 by 1.125. So this depth right now is just 1 inch. To make this a cube, what we want to do is type in 1.125. Okay. Then what we do is we'll press enter. All right. So this is what we've got for the extrude. And we're actually done extruding this. But I do want to tell you all one thing real quick before we press this green check mark. Anytime if you end up having any trouble where your object is not extruding, a lot of the times what will happen is students will select surface on accident instead of solid. So if you extrude the surface, this will give you a hard time and this will not actually extrude it. Okay, so always make sure that you are on solid, because we basically want to create a solid object. Okay, so now that we've created that cube, we're going to press this green check mark, and voila, you have created your first object in OnShape. Congratulations. Alrighty, if you got any questions or need any help, please feel free to send me a chat. You can also send me an email if we are outside of school hours. I will tell you it is always helpful to include a screenshot as well in your email when you are having trouble. Okay, I will see you all later. Bye bye.